Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the life expectancy of your AR-15, and this is at the request of one of my viewers. So I can tell you guys from personal experience, under normal use, you'll get about 22,000 rounds on your AR-15, and if you look up my channel name and search Radical Firearms AR-15 22,000 rounds, just put in that number, 22,000 rounds. You'll see a video where I shot out the rifling on an AR-15 and the bullets are keyholing at about 30 yards, okay? And I show you how the keyhole. So that was at about 22,000 rounds. That rifle was replaced under warranty by Radical Firearms, and this is the replacement that they sent me. The only part that's original is the lower receiver and the grip. You sent me back the same grip because it was a nice grip. So the rest of the gun was completely replaced under Radical Firearms warranty. Okay? So, and we're starting off with the barrel because a lot of times that's what people focus on. But here's the thing, before you burn out your barrel, there's other parts that are likely going to break first. And they did break in my experience, and I had to replace them. However, those parts are easy to replace. So let's talk a little bit more about the barrel. Okay, I told you guys, I shot it out at about 22,000 rounds. During the course of its life, there was only about, basically, there was only somewhere between 6 to 10 times where I shot the gun fast enough where the rail over here got so hot that I could not hold it, okay? So that was only 6 to 10 times. The reason is because heat will destroy your barrel faster than anything else. So if you are bump firing the gun like on a regular basis, or if you got a binary trigger on it and you're just doing like constant mag dumps, or if you got an auto lower on it, or an auto switch, an auto drop sear, if you're shooting the gun in full auto, you're going to burn through that barrel a lot faster. And the numbers that I heard from the military is that the life expectancy of full auto ARs, and I think this goes back into the 60s and 70s, the life expectancy was about 6,000 rounds on full auto ARs, M16s. And mind you, of course, they weren't shooting the gun in full auto all the time, okay? It was like occasional full auto fire. And that was what the life expectancy was, about 6,000 rounds. So with today, the way we shoot guns, where occasionally I'll do mag dumps, you know, very rarely do I get the gun so hot that I can't touch it over here. You know, so I was able to go about 22,000 rounds. And normally what I do is, if I'm doing a training session where I think the gun's going to be getting that hot, I'll bring out 2 or 3 AR-15s, lay them on the table here, and I'll just cycle them. Okay, so when one starts getting so hot that you can't hold the rail anymore, you put it on the side, put it in the shade, let it cool, pick up the next one, start working with that one. When that one gets so hot that you can't hold it anymore, you pick up the next one. That's why you want to have multiple guns, right? So that's a good way to prolong the life of your AR. Don't let it get so hot that you can't touch the metal rail. So to me, this is almost like a fail-safe, in the sense that if this gets too hot where you can't touch it, okay, time to get out another rifle, okay? So that's, you know, now with the old plastic guards, right? With the plastic ones, you can hold the plastic a lot longer before it gets so hot that you can't hold it. So there's more of a tendency, you're more likely to start burning out the barrel faster if you got a plastic hand guard here, right? With the metal one here, unless you got a glove on, you know, as soon as this gets hot, you're not going to want to hold this anymore. Now, sometimes people will hold it back here, right? And this is a technique that I have, you know, I think it was one of the times where I did have to hold it back here because it got that hot. But basically, if it gets to that point, if you're interested in prolonging the life of your rifle, put it down, get another one, let that one cool down, all right? So now, like I said earlier, a lot of times people focus on the barrel. The first thing that's most likely going to break on your AR is the trigger group, right? Because of the trigger group, when you got your trigger sears and you got your hammer, the parts that connect each other are at very fine points, right? So there's a very fine point where the trigger sear meets the the hammer, and as you shoot it, that gets worn out, right? So the AR trigger groups are only rated for about 5,000 rounds, okay? And I will usually get closer to 8,000 rounds, but certainly by 10,000 rounds, you're gonna wear out your trigger group, okay? And there's two ways I have seen that that wearing out manifest itself. One way is where it just locks up, where you're shooting it and it's just locking up. And sometimes if you put it on safe and take it off safe, it will unlock it. Sometimes you got to cycle it to unlock it. But if that's happening, basically your sears are getting worn out. And the other way I have seen the trigger group get worn out is where it starts doing auto bursts, right? 2 and 3 round auto bursts, sometimes more round auto bursts. Again, that's because your spur and your disconnector are starting to get worn out, and that will give you auto burst. So that's a that's an indication that your trigger group is worn out. So that's going to definitely happen by 10,000 rounds. Okay, usually by around 8,000 rounds. All right, so that's the one thing. That's why I tell people, make sure you got extra trigger groups. All right, because the trigger, you got parts that are moving against each other. Especially with every time you fire this, the bolt comes back and it violently slams against that hammer and flips it back. These parts wear out. The trigger pins here, they can also break. Okay, I haven't seen them really break on ARs. I've seen them AR9s, or basically 9mm ARs, which are a direct blowback, right, are a lot more violent. The gun gets beat up a lot more with 9mm, because with the AR-15 that shoots 5.56, the bolt rotates. So that rotating action actually it cushions the action a little bit, right? Because it has to unlock, move back. The reason, so that rotation slows down the action a little bit. With the blowbacks, there's nothing to slow it down, so the thing just slams back. What I've done to prolong the life of my 9mm ARs is I use an 8-ounce buffer weight. So instead of using the 4-ounce, because ARs usually take 3-ounce buffers, with the 9mm ARs, they usually use 4s. I put an 8-ounce in there because that slows down the action even more, and that helps prolong, the internals of the gun. Okay, so trigger group, that's going to wear out by around 8,000 rounds. Other thing is the parts of the bolt. Okay, you can expect your firing pin to break by 8,000 to 10,000 rounds. Okay, now the interesting thing about the firing pin is that it's in the channel. So I've actually there's been several times when I was shooting the gun was working fine, and then I said, okay, time to clean the gun, because the way I know it's time to clean the gun is when I run the charging handle. If I start feeling a little sticking, right, it doesn't feel as smooth as it normally is supposed to feel, I know it's time to clean the gun. That's usually somewhere between 500 and 700 rounds on an AR. So I'm like, okay, I'm shooting the gun, bang, 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 gun's working fine. And I say, okay, let me clean this gun now, because I can see the charging handle starting to, just starting to be a little bit extra resistance there. Take the bolt apart, and I find that the firing pin is broken. Okay, so the gun will normally fire or shoot with a broken firing pin, because the firing pin is in the channel that's guiding it. Okay, so it can be broken in 2 parts. I've heard people say it can be broken in 3 parts. And because basically the part, even if they separate, the parts are lined up, it's still pushing on each other. Now, when I did have the thing I noticed is with the when the firing pin was broken, I had noticed that at some point that day I did have a misfire. Okay, but it was working fine. But I did have, let's say, 1 misfire that day, most likely caused by that firing pin that was in 2 parts. Okay, so that can be an indication that your firing pin is broken if you're starting to have some misfire. So firing pin, it's a $4 part, right? No big deal. Get extra firing pins. Same thing. The trigger groups are about $60 to $70. Have at least two extra trigger groups. I use the ALG ones. They're about $60. I just have a couple of them, in my box, in my parts kit, right? My parts box. Okay. So the firing pins, basically all the parts of the bolt, the firing pin itself can break, and it will break. let me open this up. All right, so the cam, which is that little piece right there, that's what rotates the bolt. That piece over there is known to break. Okay, I've never broken one. All right, but they've been known to break just because of that. Because what happens is when the gas comes in through the key over here, through the gas key, and it drops down, what happens is there's two actions. It actually blows this forward, right? It blows this forward, and that cam is constantly, every time you fire this, it's slamming against that as it explodes forward like that, right? From the gases dropping in, and then the gases come out of these two holes over here, and then once this turns all the way to unlock it, then this starts moving back. Okay, so the bolt itself acts as a piston, basically. The nice thing about this piston, unlike, let's say, an AK-47, where the piston is on the top and to the front, and as the piston goes back and forth, it's, you know, that momentum moves the gun back and forth. The piston on an AR is the bolt itself, which is in line with the barrel and the stock. So as the gun recoils, it's coming straight back. Okay, so from what I understand, an AR-15 is not a true direct impingement, even though we would normally refer to this as a direct impingement gun. It's not a true direct impingement because the bolt itself acts as a piston. Okay, so going back to the parts that will break. Actually, you know what? Let me pause this and let me get a pin to get this out so we can take a closer look at this. All right, so I got something here to take this bolt apart. I'm going to take this, take the cotter pin out. All right, so here's your firing pin. This is something that will usually break. I've seen it break here. I've seen it break here. This is something that will break by 10,000 rounds, almost guaranteed. Okay. This piece here, your cam. My God. By the way, you should, even though this cotter pin normally doesn't break, it's a small part that's easy. If you drop this, you're not going to find it. So you want to definitely have an extra, pin to be able to put in there and lock the pin in place. All right, here we go. So this part here, the cam, this is a part that is known to break by 8,000 to 10,000 rounds. I've never broken one. I've never broken one, so I can't say I broke it. Now, here's the thing. On that AR that I mentioned earlier that went the 22,000 rounds, about halfway through its life, I replaced the entire bolt. All right, the entire bolt got replaced under warranty because basically the extractor broke and the cam broke, and it was all covered under warranty. So it was just cheaper for them to just send me out a whole new bolt. Okay, so that's why I never got a chance to break the cam, but this is a part that can break. Okay, let's pull this out. So on the bolt itself, right? Okay, this is, well, first of all, the extractor. That's a part that will often wear out or break. Usually the claw is what wears out. On my 9mm ARs, and those things, I do so much shooting with those. Those can do like 1,000 rounds in a week, sometimes 2,000 rounds in a week. Usually the claw just gets completely worn out and flat, so that if I take the pin here and I put it against the inside of the extractor, there's nothing to catch. It's just a smooth surface. It just goes through like that, you know. So the claw gets completely worn out. It's a cheap part. It's like a $5 to $10 part. A lot of people sometimes will say, if you shoot steel case, you'll wear out your extractor faster. An extractor is a $15 part. Okay. The ammunition is the expensive stuff. I'd rather buy steel case ammunition, which is cheaper, right? Because I save a whole lot of money shooting steel case ammunition than I would by trying to preserve the life of the extractor. So the extractor is nothing. I mean, it's like I got like a whole box full of extractors. So that's a zero consideration. The AR-15 is meant to be a light, almost, disposable gun. Okay, so we really, we do the regular maintenance on it. Okay. If we're shooting like for the normal amount of shooting that we normally do, the parts that I'm talking to you guys about, these are the parts that are going to break. Just have these parts in reserve. Don't like limit your training because you're concerned with the gun might break or parts might break. Let them break. It's just like you drive your car. Parts break, you take it to the mechanic, you fix it. That's just, you need to use your car. You don't concern yourself with, hey, I shouldn't go shopping today because I'm going to put more miles on my car. You use your car, you use your gun. Don't concern yourself with parts breaking. Just replace them when they break. Okay, so the extractor, I've never seen it break in the middle over here, although I have seen, I think I've seen pictures of extractors that have broken in the middle. I've broken the pin that holds the extractor in place. That's something that I've broken, okay? And then when that came out, I saw that the spring and the little rubber that's underneath it was also, so that's all part of the extractor. So when you buy an extractor, you want to get the extractor, the spring that's on the inside, and the pin that holds it in place. Get all those three parts. Get a set that has all those three parts, because you're gonna need to change it. I never had an issue with the ejector breaking. That's the ejector right there. That's also spring loaded. If you push in it, never had that break. See if you push in on that. Well, there it goes. See how it moves? Yeah, I've never had that break. I've never had the bolt itself break, although I've seen pictures of the bolt broken, because this is a very thin area. Okay, that's under a lot of pressure. I've seen lots of pictures with a bolt breaks, so that's something that you want to have spares. And a lot of times what people will do is they'll have a spare bolt and they'll stick it, this grip isn't thick enough to hold it, but sometimes there's a compartment in here. Well, there, actually I can fit in there. And then they'll put a cover here, they'll put a spare bolt and spare firing pin in the grip over here, in this hollow area of the grip. I have other ARs that actually have a, like a little door mechanism where you can lock in place. This is a good place for that, because this is like a part that can break. Firing pins a part that can break. Cams a part that can break. Okay. And that's a crucial part. If that breaks, the gun's not going to work. Okay. What else? Those are the main parts that I have broken. Now I did a video just yesterday where the bolt catch started wearing out on one of my AR-9s, right, on one of my 9mm ARs. I mean, it was still working. It's just that if I locked it back and I hit the gun hard, it would basically close. So that's an easy change. That's an easy change. Again, that's like a $10 part. And the other parts, let's start from the front to back in case I missed anything. Bird cage, I've never broken it on an AR. I have broken it on an AK. Okay, that's not a big deal, because it doesn't matter if the bird cage or the slant on an AK breaks. The gun's still gonna work. Barrel, like I said, under normal use, you're gonna get about 22,000 rounds. If you do lots of rapid fire, that's gonna shorten up. If you're doing full auto fire, that's gonna move closer to like 6,000 rounds. Okay. The rail itself, basically, if you put a bipod on this and like have it really tight and just like fall on the ground, if the bipod doesn't give, your rail can crack. Okay, so I'd rather have a bipod that's like light and breakable, that will break first rather than it break my rail. Okay, but I've never broken a rail. Okay, upper receiver, never broken. Optics, let's talk about the optics for a second. Okay, the optic that I had on that AR that I mentioned before that did the 22,000 rounds, it's not on this gun, but it's still on another gun, and it's still running. Okay, so if you're using optics like quality optics, like I use Hollow Sun, right, that are battery powered, solar powered, right, or actually solar powered with a battery backup, have auto sleep, shake awake, okay, they will outlast the gun, okay, as has mine. The original optic was on this gun, on that gun that did 22,000 rounds. Right now it's sitting on a Lynx 12, which is an AK shotgun, and it's still running. Okay, so a lot of times people concern themselves too much, I think, with the possibility of the optic not working, and they got to have backup sights and crap like that. I don't even have backup sights on my guns. All right, the reason is because I have so much confidence in the optic. All right, there's other things that are going to break before the optic breaks, right? So if you've got auto sleep and shake awake optics, don't worry about the optic. You know, there's other things that are going to break first. Okay. Charging handle. Almost forgot about this. Okay. In the last I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I've broken 3 charging handles. Okay. This is a part that's constantly under a lot of stress. Okay, let's open this back up. You're constantly racking this thing. Put this bolt together so you can, basically I was just going to demonstrate. By the way, the bolt carrier, not something that's going to break. The only thing that can break on this is the gas, these bolts, these screws over here that hold the gas key in place. If they have been properly staked, you see how they've been staked in over there so that they won't unscrew. This is something that can come loose if it's not properly staked. I've only had one where it came loose and the staking job was crap on it. I think that's the one that Radical replaced under the warranty. And then again, this is like one of the early guns when the companies first started doing business. So the first couple of guns, I think they were going through some growing pains trying to figure out how to build these things. But with these later models, I mean, they're extremely reliable. All right, let's get this guy together. So let's put the bolt in. So in case, actually I should clean this thing before putting it together, but anyway, I won't do that now. So the extractor goes on the outside, right? That's how you remember that. If you put this in backwards, it's not going to work because here's the thing, the cam fits one way, it doesn't fit the other way. So this has to go in the right way. So the way that works is the extractor goes on the outside. And if you can't remember, just take your cam and just test it out on both sides. And then that'll help you figure out which way it's got to go in, or which side's got to be to the outside. So extractor's facing the 2 vent holes that you see here, right? You see the vent holes? Extractor faces that. So let's put that in. Drop this guy in there. Get you in there. All right, pull it forward. Rotate this. You got to rotate it so it's flat. So this way the firing pin will fall through. Okay. And then you take your little cotter pin. Sometimes you got to twist this to get this to go in the right. There it goes. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't go in. You got to turn it. All right, so there's my bolt. Now, in order to put this back in the gun, you got to go to full extension. You got to extend this because if you push this back all the way, you see how that sticks out on the side? That won't go in. It's got to go in like that. It's got to be fully extended. And then with the charging handle, there's these 2 little ears over here, right, that stick out. Okay, that way you can see. Well, this one doesn't have much wear on it, but there's another one I have that's like got lots of wear on it. So these 2 little ears that wear out. When you put it in there, you gotta basically match up those 2 ears through the hole, and they'll fall through. And then just push it in a little bit. Again, make sure your bolt's fully extended. Put that underneath the charging handle. Put that in. Here we go. Guns loaded. So as I was starting to say earlier, charging handle is something that you use a lot, right? And it's under pressure because there's a spring in the back. And sometimes if you use it, especially if you're using it one hand, like just like on that, on one side, now you're torquing it to one side, right? Or sometimes, you know, sometimes people have ones that extend out a little bit. So if you're grabbing it one-handed like this, you're definitely torquing it a little bit. So like I said, in the last 4 years, I've broken about 3 of these. Okay, one of them, I think just so on one of them, I think the roll pin just fell out and it wouldn't lock. But the other one's actually cracked. One cracked over here, and the other one cracked up way up in the front. Okay, so charging handle is something that's going to break. It's a $10 part, $10 to $12, maybe $15 top, unless you're getting like the ambidextrous one. The ambidextrous ones, if you're just using regular optics, you don't want the ones that stick out too much because it's going to snag, it's going to hit things, okay? If you're using like a variable scope or a magnifier, then you do want the extended one because it's hard to reach charging handle underneath the variable scope. And then what happens is the variable scope, which has a bigger tube, it's going to basically kind of prevent the larger charging handle from hitting your body because basically the scope is going to hit your body first. Okay, so charging handle, that's going to break. Okay, get you know, within within the life of the gun. I don't want to say at 10,000 rounds because it didn't break on me at 10,000 rounds on that gun, but it's going to break within the life of the gun. Okay. Never had an issue with the safety breaking. Although I would consider that part of the trigger group. I would just get, you know, a trigger group. I would also have an extra safety. Again, these are all cheap things. Never had an issue with the grip breaking. Okay. Never had an issue with that. The upper and lower receiver, never had any problems with that. The only way you're really gonna break the upper or lower receiver is if like you run the gun over with your car or something, or if you like if you squib load and then shoot another round into it, in which case, you know, if the barrel is blocked and you fire a round into the gun, that might break your upper receiver or your lower receiver. It depends. I've seen, you know, it depends on how it comes back. But under normal use, the upper and lower receiver are not going to break. And it's kind of funny because a lot of times people make a really big deal over which company they got the receiver from. Like a lot of people make fun of like Anderson. They'll call him the poverty pony. I mean, it doesn't matter. That's just not going to break. Okay, that's not a part that breaks. Okay. The recoil spring, although it can wear out, I've never had an issue of it wearing out. On the AK-47, I did break the recoil spring somewhere around 10,000 rounds. So interesting thing is a lot of people say that AK-47, very tough gun, never breaks. You know what? When I broke the recoil spring, the gun, and I didn't have a replacement with me, the gun was out of commission, was not working that day, right? So if you break something like a recoil spring, the gun's out of commission. Now, the recoil spring on the AK-47 is thinner, right? It's long and it's thin, so I can see why that would break, is more prone to breaking, whereas the recoil spring that's in the buffer tube of an AR-15 is a lot thicker. That's less likely to break, although over, you know, I guess after 10,000 rounds, it might start losing some of its tension. In which case, if it's doing that, it could start beating up the gun, right? So if you don't have the right, if you don't have enough tension back here, your bolt might be really slamming really back to the back side of the gun, and it can start beating your gun up. The way you pay attention to that is watch your ejection pattern. On most of these guns, the ejection pattern should be either at the 3 o'clock position, somewhere between the 1 o'clock position and the 3 o'clock position, right? If it's shooting behind you, it may be a little undergassed, although my Colt AR, from day one, it was shooting back here. Gun's extremely reliable under almost all conditions, so not necessarily, but that's an indication. If it's ejecting behind you, there might not be enough pressure in your gas system, or you might have too much, too heavy a buffer weight in there, or too tight of a recoil spring. Okay, it should be ejecting somewhere between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock. If it's ejecting like way up to 1 o'clock, there's a chance that you've got like a highly overgassed gun. Okay, and they do like ideally the gun should be ejecting at 3 o'clock. Most of the companies prefer to have them ejecting at 2 o'clock, so that if the gas gets dirty, or if you're using steel case ammunition, which is a little less power, the gun will still work. Okay, whereas if they make it so that it's like, it's shooting at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock, then if you put in like steel case, maybe it won't work. So that's why, even though I think 3 o'clock is what it should be at, most companies are going to be ejecting at 2 o'clock. If you're ejecting at 1 o'clock, you might be slightly overgassed. One of the things that you want to pay attention to is are you starting to split your cases, right? So the cases as they come out, we'll have a case over here. If you start seeing that you're ripping the rims off of the back of the cases over here, okay, or the cases themselves are actually cutting in half, and half the case comes out while the other half stays in your chamber, that's an indication that your gun is overgassed. Okay, and I did have one gun that it wasn't my gun, but I did see a gun doing that, and the reason for that was that the gas port was a little bit too big, so that went back for a replacement. Had the customer send that back. Now, one of the ways that you can usually fine tune that is simply by putting a slightly heavier buffer weight in there, or a more tight spring. However, in that one, I think I put some. I went up to like a 5 or 6 ounce buffer weight, and it was still ripping the cases. So I knew that was just that gun needed to go back. That wasn't just a matter of fine tuning it. It was just like completely, you know, off. Okay, so that gun came back. It was working fine. So where are we? We're moving slightly backwards. We started from the front. We're moving to the back. Never had an issue with the forward assist, mainly because I never use it. Hardly ever use it. The only time you use your forward assist is if you want to quietly chamber around, or if you want to pinch it open, you know, just to check your chamber, right? And then sometimes it doesn't quite close. That's the only time I use my forward assist. So never had an issue with that. One of the things, the stock. Never had an issue with a stock. One of the ways that you can break a stock is if you mortar the gun, and that's a type of malfunction where it's a weird one. I've done other videos. Look up jam. You know, look up my channel name and jams. You'll see the different jams I do. But if you get a case that gets stuck, let's do it. So I've got empty case here. If I throw that in there, all right. Okay, so the case now is on top of my bolt. Okay. See how it's on top of my bolt? So this can be really hard to unjam, because as I'm pulling this back, see how the case is coming back? And I can't, if I lock the gun open, let's say I try to bring it all the way back, I can't open up the gun, right? So there's 2 ways to unjam this. One of the ways that was, you know, under combat conditions where you're under stress, you mortar the gun, which basically means the way you're supposed to is collapse the stock, and then you find some grass or somewhere over there, and basically you bang the gun really hard into the ground, and when it hits the ground, the inertia drives the bolt back. Okay, so that's a way to unjam this type of a jam. The preferred way to do it, okay, that doesn't break my my stock, is basically I take my middle finger, I put it in there in front of the bolt, right, and, you know, and basically just, there you go, and get it out that way. So you get your middle finger in there, and that, you know, you use your middle finger to push the bolt back, and you unjam the gun that way. So that is the preferred way to unjam the bolt override, or it has, people call it lots of different, they call it bolt override, or cartridge over bolt, whatever. So that's a thing that can break your stock. Okay, although obviously that's not going to stop the gun from working. It's just going to be less comfortable for you guys to shoot it. Okay, so there it is. That's all the parts that that can break on your AR-15, and at what point they are likely to break. Hope this video was useful for you guys. Drop some comments below. Let me know what your experiences are, and make sure that you follow me on the uncensored platforms in case this channel ever gets shut down. On Odyssey, I'm Pocono Tactical. On Rumble, I'm Pocono Guns, and on BitChute, I'm Pocono Tactical. Talk to you guys. Hey everyone, I want to give you guys a quick summary of the parts that I said that you got to have. So, a spare trigger group. This one's from ALG Defense. So get probably 2 of these AR-15 trigger groups. Get a full replacement bolt carrier with the bolt. So just have a spare one ready to go. Get yourself a lost or broken parts kits. Okay, so this is going to have all the tiny little parts that you're likely to lose or break. So for example, it'll have a firing pin in there, it'll have an extractor, it'll have all parts that you're likely to break. So if you can't afford to, you know, buy this outright, just at least get yourself a lost and broken parts kit. This one, they call it a field repair kit. This one's from Stag Arms. There's lots of them out there. But get this and then also get this. Okay, get yourself an extra charging handle. Again, this is a thin piece of metal that gets used a lot, this is likely to break. And also get yourself lots of magazines. These Lancers, I mean, I've yet to break one in, I guess, the 4 or 5 years I've been using these. I mean, they're really good, but they can get lost, especially if you're out in the woods doing a magazine change under pressure. You know, if you're doing like a time drill, you can lose these. So, and also this is one of those things that they're always looking to ban or restrict. So these I buy like 10 at a time, you know, 20 at a time, you know. So those are the parts that you need for your AR-15. And like I said, the triggers are rated for about 5,000 rounds, although usually I'll get up to 8,000 rounds with this. The bolt parts, usually I'm breaking stuff by 10,000 rounds. By 10,000 rounds, I'm breaking bolt stuff. Charging handle, again, by 10,000 rounds, good chance I've broken this. And with these magazines, they don't break, right? These Lancers and P-mags, they generally don't break, but they can get lost. Okay, so talk to you all soon.